Welcome to Bite Size Therapy Podcast with Dr. Brian Razzino. My name is Pete, and today Dr. Brian Razzino is going to share some of his thoughts and some of his recent short videos that he's put out on the interweb. Dr. Razzino, how are you doing today, my friend? What do you have in store for us today?
Mr. Peter Jansons, how are you, my friend? I'm doing well.
You've been breaking the internet lately. What do you got out there, and why do you have it out there?
We're doing some damage is what we're doing on the internet. It's
yeah,
doing some damage. Yes, we are.
So if I'm a parent, why can't I take my guitar and smash it against my kid's TV screen if he's not cleaning his room? What's wrong with that?
So Pete is referring to a TikTok video. You saw that video. What was your initial reaction to that, Pete? Let's go to that video. Hold on. Let's see.
Well, we can go to whatever one you want to, my friend.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. So, yeah, the format of the show today is a little bit different. Yeah. So we're going to look at the video and we're going to talk a little bit about what the hell was I thinking?
Yeah.
So the goal is, on TikTok, make these videos that maybe are relatable to the kids, relatable to the parents. In the first video, let's just play it. Talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, go.
Hey, how's school going? It's all right. I'm in math class. My teacher is like, she seems like she's always angry, like yelling a lot. Yeah, you say that a lot. I don't even know if she likes us. It's not to me like you'd need a better attitude. Maybe if you walked in there a little more optimistically, she'd respond better. Anyway, how's sports? It's okay. I've been thinking about it. Some of the things you've been eating around here haven't been too good for you. We got to straighten that out. You drinking enough water? I never see you with water in your hands. Good talk. This was good. See you later. Hey, babe.
So obviously, when we talk to our kids, there could be a lot of different reasons why we engage our kids, right? Like we want something from them. We want to do something. And we need their help. We got a problem with something they're doing.
Yeah.
We want them to change that. I mean, that usually a lot of times when we talk to our kids, we want something from them, and we're not necessarily there. But what we do is we start off, instead of just saying, hey, I want something from you, we ask them, hey, we do all the things that adults do with each other. We play these games, where we say, hey, how are you? And then we sit and we pretend to listen,
Yeah.
We don't really care how they are, but, we just want them to, we want their attention. We want them to engage in the conversation. So, but our kids might, if they take us seriously, somewhere early on in those interactions, our kids will, at some point, they will have taken us seriously. Early on, they wouldn't have known that, that wasn't a real question. It was actually just a question to get to what they wanted to talk about. And so kids answer and they find out, they learn, oh, well, anytime my parent wants to talk to me, it's probably not good, right? It's like, oh, dad wants to talk to you. It's like, it's not to come downstairs and, for me to come downstairs and them to tell me what a nice job I did on the lawn, or how they were proud of the fact that I got to school on time that day. It's because there's something I screwed up with, right? And so this video is partly that. It's also, when our kids share something with us, we do a lot of interpreting of what they're sharing and what is meaningful and what isn't meaningful, instead of actually just listening and trying to understand from their perspective what's meaningful to them. What was important about what they shared to them. So like this father in this video sees it as a lesson to talk, or an opportunity to talk to his kid about the kid's attitude problem, that the dad probably feels like he has, right? Yeah. So now it's a great opportunity to, educate him on that. It's a sort of a little bit of an I told you so moment, turns into that. And the kid doesn't feel like, the kid feels totally invalidated. He feels like, my dad didn't even take the time to even listen to what it was that was bothering me about my teacher, and assumed that it was my problem, not hers, you know?
So it was like a parenting check the box. Oh, there's my kid. I got to talk to him today. Check.
Hey, how you doing? Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
And then now, Dr. Brian, this isn't a bunch of hating parents videos. It's just an awareness of, hey, this could be going out there for some people, and perceptions or reality on either side. I'm amazed that the kid talked that much, because normally they don't even look you in the eye and they just look down and say, nothing, it's okay, fine, yes, no, objective answers.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of reasons for that too. Obviously, you know, and it's not just that they don't want to talk to you. I mean, or that they don't like you, or that they have an attitude problem. There can be all kinds of reasons. I mean, teenagers are just figuring out, you know, how to talk about things. You know, they're not used to talking to adults openly about stuff. They have a lot of different thoughts and concerns that they're trying to verbalize. You know, they don't know how to yet. They don't necessarily know how they're feeling at any given moment. They don't have the type of awareness or insight that we have. And so, you know, sometimes our questions are just kind of overwhelming, you know, like, what's going on with you? You know, and it's sort of just like, lots of things are going on with me. Where should I start? They don't know where to begin. You know, it's just sort of like, much less, I don't know that I would trust you with any one of them. Those are important things to consider. But your question about hating on parents, I'm a parent, and, you know, no, of course not hating on parents in the least. What's I always find interesting is, you know, some of these videos they get people riled up, they get them really upset and angry, and I'm a little confused by it, because, like, if you're not doing the things that I'm saying in the video, like, what is your problem with the video? I don't understand.
Do you get parents saying that to you?
What's
in the
that?
comments? Do the parents make those comments saying, like, you know,
Oh, parents can't do anything right. Yeah. Well, I guess parents, there's no winning for the parents. You know, it's kind of one of the things.
Yeah.
Or you try talking to your kid when your kid does da 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 da, whatever.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's sort of like, well, look, we can talk about the problems that you're having with your kid, but this video is about a specific thing that parents tend to do. And it's like, do you recognize yourself in this? This is like something that you might see yourself doing, and like, maybe you could, like, once you recognize it, you can avoid doing it, right? And it's also something where, you know, parents that don't do this and they're aware of, like, communicating well with their kids, they look at a video like this and they're just like, oh yeah, I mean, like, they don't have a problem with it at all, you know? So I think that parents are generally anxious about their own parenting style and insecure about it, and they don't like feeling like somebody else is picking on them or, you know, calling them out. But the fact of the matter is, this video isn't calling anybody out. It's just calling out a type of interacting, you know, with kids. It's not saying parents are bad, and it's not speaking in general terms. It's talking about something. It's talking about a common pitfall that happens in parenting, right?
So how would you do it differently then? It's almost like you need, let's just say it's a 20-second short, add another 20 seconds for how it should have went down, before, after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can do that. Absolutely. Which I have done.
Yeah.
People will have problems with that too, though. So it's sort of like, some of the feedback that I can get is helpful. Certainly, you know, I've gotten the feedback. Can you show us how, like, a more constructive way to go might be? And that's a legitimate question. You know, it's one thing to point out and say, this is the problem. That's an easy thing to do. But then to say what the solution is, that's actually practical, realistic, that's a very different thing. And the part that people really struggle with. People will invariably, though, there will be, if the audience is large enough, there will be a percentage of people that will have a problem with that too, because they'll find a reason why what you did won't work with their kid, right? And so it's not something where there's a one size fits all. It's more of a, you know, something where you look at it and you have to try to appreciate the spirit of what it is that I'm trying to say to do, versus how do this exact thing. I had parents. So with this video, let's watch the video on the guitar video.
So when you get up playing your game, clean your room. I post this video as an example of good parenting. I can't. I don't even have words, man. I mean, did you see that kid jump? Did you see how frightened that kid is? Is that really how you want to parent? I can't tell you how furious this makes me. It's just no.
So I was not.
What's
happy.
wrong with that?
Nothing that I could see. I mean, I think that's what's on the Mayo Clinic's recommendations for parenting.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So this video has a certain life of its own. So this was a video snippet that was on another guy's website, not the guy who was doing the guitar thing. It was another guy who then afterwards, sort of like I just did in this video, did it's called a stitch, and he comes in afterwards and says, "This is a great way to parent. Nothing wrong with this." And like, I approve of this. That kid will never do whatever they did again. And I was just like appalled. I was totally appalled by that, and obviously did not agree. And what was even more fascinating to me is the number of people that got on to the comments and said things like, "Oh, well, how many times, I'm going to guess your kids slap you, how many times have your kids slapped you before, because you sound like you're weak, and this is what's wrong with this country. You're actively making the next generation weak." And my from where I sit, it's hard for me to take those comments even close to serious, because
Right.
the people that are writing them, I don't believe they would do that, or would they? Maybe they would, but I think that a lot of people wouldn't actually do that sort of thing. I think what seemed to offend people was that I was coming in and I was judging a parent for judging it negatively, and I was mad about it. But what I thought was really interesting too is that there were a lot of people in there that said things like, when your child tries, when you have to tell your child for the 20th time, and they say no, what are you going to do then? As if the only thing to do is smash the guitar in the TV. It's like, how do we suddenly go from asking them 20 times to going ballistic, right? And you can say something?
Yeah, is that consequences? I mean, there has to.
Yeah.
So, broken TV, take away the TV.
Take away
spanking.
Take away the TV. I mean, like, take away the TV, or take away other privileges, or or one of the questions that I come up to with people is, like, how did you get to where you are at this moment in time in your relationship, right? Like, when somebody says, my kid's out of control, there's nothing I can do, excuse me, there's a lot of things to evaluate, like what's going on with them neuropsychologically, or, is there something else chemically that might be happening, or abuse or neglect, whatever, that sort of thing. But it's also like, your kid's out of control now. What have you been doing? What's the learning history? What has been going on all the way up to this point that's cumulatively led to them now being quote unquote out of control, right? If you take it out of context, it's much more difficult to have anything intelligent to say about it, But if you're someone of these parents who just constantly nags, never follows through on consequences, then yeah, your kid's gonna realize that you don't mean what you say, and they're not gonna do what you want them to do, right?
Well, a lot of this stuff, I mean, that's staged. Oh, they just happen to be filming right then and there, and so
yes,
it's the internet. It's the internet. So
yes, but what's interesting is that, and it may be staged, but what's interesting is that people get so emotionally invested in it, and they do. There are people that condone that. They think, you know what, that guy actually, my hat's off to that guy. I don't blame him one bit. And it's like,
well, it gets off track because then politics comes into play. whether you're the right or the left, you're too hard, you're too soft, this and that.
Because people on the right beat their kids, right?
and it's look, first of all, you got the degrees, I don't. Kids don't really listen to what they say, they watch what you do, right? So if the room needs to be clean, everybody has a role to play in the household, and everybody understands that. And if you explain it and they don't do it, there's got to be consequences. And if you're not consistent with the consequences, everybody in life is going to test you, whether it's your kids, your employees, whatever. How far will you let things go? So
absolutely. And I talk to parents a lot of times. The model that I use, I talk to parents about, I say, what's the best, think about for a moment, a boss that you had that you liked. Let's think about what you liked about that boss, right? And then let's think about a boss that you didn't like. Now, the boss that people like, that's the one that we usually want to come closer to in terms of parenting style. You're not going to go into your employee's office with a guitar and smash their computer to pieces if their, report wasn't done on time, like that doesn't play out anywhere else in life, right?
Doc, I think what it is people want consistency. It's like, even if you don't say something, you are saying something. Like you're a manager of an office and you say, we're all going to come in on time. And then you have an employee that doesn't come in on time and you don't say anything. Even because you didn't say anything, you're approving it, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and kids are watching that same stuff too. So it's, if you want a clean room and it's not clean the first time, then be consistent that first time when it's not done. Don't wait 20 times, right? Because after 20 times, hey, I guess the room doesn't need to be cleaned.
Exactly. And, be clear about what it is that you're expecting and when you expect it to be done by, right? And if it's not done by that time in the way that you're asking them to do it, this is what is going to happen, and let them know what they can expect to happen. Yeah. It's also a collaborative thing. I mean, it's sort of like, you can talk to your kids about what's getting in the way of them doing it, or what is a realistic idea of a clean room.
I don't know.
I don't know. Yes, they will probably say, I don't know. But as soon as you start to offer ideas, they may have something to say about those ideas, right? And the fact that you're engaging them in that conversation, that's like an important gesture to the kid. Now, the kid may not get it the first few times, but they will start to come to these conversations with ideas of their own, because they actually now are starting to reflect on this stuff. And you're actually building a really important skill for them, right? Which is how to collaborate with somebody. How do you collaborate with someone? How do you communicate on, joint goals, How do you figure out ways to solve problems together?
How do you get past that I don't know part? From what I remember about being a dad is if you ask them right then and there, you're not going to get anything. But for some reason, if you go on a car ride, I don't know what it is about the car ride, but kids will talk when you're in a car. I don't know why that is, but they'll open up. Hey, remember, why don't you clean your room?
Well, I don't know. The I don't know answer is one that can be given for a number of reasons. So, it goes back a little bit to the I don't know question is one that, a lot of times parents sort of have this suspicion that they actually do know. And they have these actually really clear and elaborate sets of reasons, but they're just not going to tell you, they're going to withhold it from you. That's actually really not true. Unless it's something, I mean, there are exceptions to that, but typically it's not true. It's typically one, you ask them a question that they didn't understand. That might be one thing, because you're using adult language. You framed it in a way that's just like, they don't understand what you're really asking them, right? But they sense that you're really pissed about it. And so they kind of feel like maybe they shouldn't say anything, or you're asking them a question that they don't, it's like too big of a question. Like, like, why did you do that? We love to ask, why did you do that? Well, like, that question may not even have an answer, And the kids are like, Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I did that. First of all, if they do know why they did that, they know that whatever it is that they're going to say is not going to be good enough, that they're in trouble. You know, I remember one time I said to a coach, it was after I was playing football after the play, I did something, and the coach asked me, grabbed me, why did you do that? He said, you're lucky you got away with that. And I said, and my smart ass answer was, yeah, well, I knew I would be able to get away with it. That's why I did it. and his answer
Yes.
was, and his answer was, that's a stupid reason. Go run to the fence, right? So he asked me a question that he didn't really want an answer to, right? And so, like, first, you gotta like, you know, if you're gonna ask your kid a question, you gotta really want an answer, meaning like any answer that they're going to give you, and you don't. It's not an answer that you like. You can't use it against them, okay? Because then they're gonna learn that, like, hey, if I answer this person, they're just gonna take whatever it is I say and they're gonna twist it against me. So I'm just not gonna say anything, right?
Lawyer up.
Well, yeah, totally. I mean, it makes sense, right? You know, and then also, you know, it's also the overwhelming part is that when we sometimes when we talk to them, if they're not used to being spoken to, right, or engaged in conversation, it's going to be really weird. They're going to wonder what are they up to, right? Like, why are they suddenly interested in me? Like, what is it they want from me, right?
Mhm.
So if you want to engage your kids, you have to do it like all the time. Like, this has to be a pattern for you. You have to like legitimately talk to them and engage them and take an interest. And like when like they do tell you about their day, like you can't be bored by it. You can't be like taking phone calls. You can't be on your phone, or you can't like interrupt them because you know have to go do something. Like, you have to like listen to what they're actually saying and like communicate to them that it's like of value to you, right? Just because it's their experience. If that doesn't happen, they're gonna realize that shit talking to you actually doesn't make any sense.
You know, in the business world, you have employees, you schedule meetings, one-on-ones, once a week, every other week. You know, it's always there. You always show up for it. You need to schedule something like that for your kids, in addition to always being there for them to come to you. But they know that, hey, Tuesday, 7 p.m., we're going to get together and talk about whatever, you know, the week. Here are my expectations for the coming week. I'd like the room clean. Does that happen with parents?
It
I
can't.
put my kid on a PIP once, a performance improvement plan.
Did you?
Yeah.
How'd that go? How'd it go?
It worked well because he got some questionable grades, and we're about to go to the Super Bowl. The Bears were playing, and I'm like,
Oh,
I said, dude, you got to get good grades, and we're not going. And he didn't get good grades. I'm like, well, here. So I wrote it out. I said, okay, here's what's going to happen, or you're never going to get this. You're never going to get that.
did you go to the game or no? You had to miss.
Yeah,
it?
we went, and we came back, and the grades improved. So it was a positive thing. But I was always wondering, why should parents be a little bit more formal in their communications just to make sure it gets done, or that's not practical?
Well, some parents do need to, because it's just like they don't. It's just how they communicate. They don't communicate clearly enough as it is, and so they really need to concentrate on doing that. And so for some parents that does work well. Other parents are very clear and throughout the day, like and the kids can like take that in and hold on to it and that sort of thing. I think posting chores or posting
Yeah.
calendars and stuff like that, that's always really useful for everybody, like not just the kids but like the parents too, because it's easy to lose track of where you're at. But in terms of like the rhythms of the family in the day, like what you can do, you can do appointments and stuff like that. But I also try to recommend finding joint activities that you guys like doing together and just doing those activities, right? And if things will come up, I mean, that are going on in the kids' lives, you know, they will, if they trust you, if they're having positive experiences with you, they will start to just inevitably share about something that happened that day. And a lot of good communication and connection can happen during those times. And these are times that are like, they just might be after dinner, before bed, the bedtime routine. Everybody is sort of like, down in the den, or everybody's hanging out on the main floor. It could be a game, it could be a TV show, it could be some other activity, but like having that in the rhythm of the family, where you can find pockets of time where you sit down next to each other and just kind of hang out is really, really important, because you never know what's going to come up.
Is that why you therapists always have games? Like, look behind you, man. You got all, when kids are occupied about something else, does that free up a part of their brain to actually let something slip and communicate it to you?
Well, it does somewhat. So one of the things that it does is it makes it less direct and less intense. So you and I will talk, if I'm sitting here talking to you and directly, that's a very intense interaction for somebody, a younger person, and some kids can do that very well for different reasons, but other kids really have trouble with that. It's just too much of a deer in the headlights feeling for them. And so you can learn a lot from somebody when you play a game with them through lots of small behaviors that accrue throughout the game, and you can develop rapport and trust that way. It is also something that allows you a space of time to actually just kind of sit with each other and allow things to come up, right? It's much more relaxed. And when kids are relaxed and, people are relaxed, then ideas flow much more freely. And you can just kind of ask, you can make comments about things that are in the ballpark of, things that they might want to talk about or that they're interested in. Could be scores in sports. It could be something that's happening with, public, popular, popular
Pop culture.
Pop culture. Yeah. Any of those things can be worked in. And, you don't have to, it does not have to be something where you have to have a lesson at the end of every interaction or a moral to the story, right? It can just be whatever it is, and so partly it's about letting up that control, giving up that control to just let things emerge organically, right? But a lot of parents, it's funny, a lot of parents, they have trouble doing that themselves, I think, because I don't think it's just because there's a like they don't know how to relate to kids, although that might be there. It's also that they just don't know how to hang out and relax. Like they just don't know how to do that. Like they may not have had much of that, right? In their lives, they may not have had parents that did that with them, right? Yeah. Previous generations probably didn't have a ton of that, and so they don't really know how to do it very well. It's not in their wheelhouse. It's not their comfort zone. So, that's something that parents have to be given a lot of permission on, and they have to be given a lot of encouragement on,
Well, parents, it's even spouses, like whoever's coming home from work, you just have to know that first hour they got to decompress, or even worse, they never decompress because they're always on the clock. Even they take their work home with them and they're on call 24 hours a day. It's I think now more than ever that schedule needs to be in there where it's like, hey man, this 30 minutes or this hour is all me and you, no matter what. And, to get it in. Kids like structure. I don't know, if I go back in time, maybe I would do it. Because a lot of what I do, do as I say, not as I do. I'm a perfect parent, Dr. Brian.
Yeah, it's easy to be a perfect parent, theoretically, right?
On a podcast.
On a podcast, absolutely. The thing that you said, though, there's a lot that has to do with boundaries, setting up boundaries that like what you're talking about, which is like when we're home, like there are certain boundaries that people just don't get through when we're here, right? Like we don't take phone calls during dinner time, right?
Yeah.
That's, when somebody comes to the door, I'm sorry, we're having dinner right now, we can't talk. And there's no sort of like, unless it's the police and it's an emergency, right? So right. If it's somebody else, even a neighbor, we're having dinner now, we have to be quick or whatever. So there are boundaries that you put up that are going to be really important to like protect your time with your family. And that goes with the electronics too. Like you want to build boundaries around checking your email, turning your notifications off, not being, not responding, not being in these conversations that are going to carry over, or telling people at work, look, I'm going to be out of pocket for a couple of hours here. All right. I'll get back to you at whatever time if you want to go back into it after the kids are in bed or whatever. But those are structures that you have to be just more intentional about building to protect that time.
Now, what were the other videos that you had? You had a couple more, didn't you, Doc?
Parents, when your only form of discipline is punishment, taking away things, and being critical and disrespectful, you end up with a child that has nothing left to lose. Believe me, that's not what you want in your child.
A lot of our parenting is reactive, right? A lot of times when we parent, all we're doing is reacting to what's been given to us, right? So like, oh, Tommy and Joe are fighting. Keep it quiet. I'll give you something to shout about, right? We react to whatever it is that's going on, okay? You didn't take the trash out. We're reacting to that, okay? Part of that reaction is also when we think of discipline or when we think about, parenting, we think about consequences. It's about taking away things. It's about punishments, about that sort of thing. When actually that's a small part of the equation in reality. The reality is there's so much more that goes into paying attention to things that they're doing that are like even in the ballpark of what you want them to do, right? And noticing those things, and making kind of a big deal out of that, right? Like, dude, you brought your backpack upstairs today, man. Thank you. I really appreciate that, right? Good job. And if they forget the next day, you can always just say to them, dude, you did a good job yesterday. Remember, we can do it again today, right? So you encourage them, but you're always, the principle in psychology and behavioral science is called shaping. You're trying to shape their behavior closer and closer to something that's kind of approximate to what you want, or what's going to be more functional for them in their lives. What's going to like serve them better, right? Taking away things is part of it, but what happens is people, the kid may say they don't care. Now that's different than if they really do or don't care. But a lot of times kids will say they don't care because they're just trying to deflate the parent. They're trying to manipulate the parent. I don't care. And then, they want the parent to be demoralized. It's a little bit of it's like a battle, They have their propaganda, you have your propaganda. Right. I don't care. I don't want you dead anyway. I can stay up here all day, all of these things. And then it's sort of like leverage. Yeah. What are you going to do now? I took the door off the hinges. Okay. Now what are you going to find a way around that? They're going to find a way around that. So what do you get now that all the stuff that they were doing in their room, now they're just doing it in the garage, or now they're just doing it in the backyard. Right. So you're not really getting at the heart of the problem. What you're doing is you're escalating, right? You're escalating it to like, instead of DEFCON 4 or whatever, you're going down to 3 and 2, and so after that, you've only gotten so much that you can do, and everybody's so mad and resentful that like your ability to come back to the table and talk about things is really diminished, because the goodwill in the house is like it's really in tatters. Okay, so the kid that doesn't have anything else to lose, then can just like really, I've seen kids like do some terrible stuff. They can just really go crazy, run away. They key the parent's car. They destroy a valuable item in the house. All of these things because there's just it's a zero-sum game. There's no winners in that game. But if you start way before that, like really paying attention to stuff that they're doing, like the example that I give is one that this guy Thomas Phelan gives. He did a book, 1, 2, 3 Magic, and he talks about paying attention to catching them when they're good. That's people. A lot of people know about this, but they don't really. It's hard to practice because the example that's given is if you're watching like your favorite TV show, and your kids are in the other room and they start fighting, what's the chance that you're going to say something to them to get them to quiet down, right? You know, it's getting louder and louder. Pretty good, right? But if you're sitting there watching your favorite TV show, and your kids are in the other room, and they are playing cooperatively, they're having a nice time, what are the chances that you're going to get up, go over in there and say, hey guys, really nice job playing together. Really nice job cooperating with each other. That's great. And then going back to your TV show. Way less, like almost nobody thinks to do that, right? But that's what we have to do, because they're in the day, they're doing most of what we want, but we pay attention. We let them know that we're paying attention to that a very small part of the time, right? And the more we can notice that, the more we can pay attention to that, the more they're going to start doing that, right? Because they don't know what we want from them until we start telling them, you know, when they do it. It's not until then that they get a clearer idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So do you think a written note helps, something in writing?
Well, it can, but I would go to the route of talking to your kid about that. I would say, hey, look, do you think that like a note would help? Like, what would help you? Is there something like you think would help you to remember this? Like, do you want to write it down? Do you want me to write it down? Like, right? So you want to engage them. The problem with just writing a note, not that it's, look, it could work really fine with some kids. Like for some kids, it could go great, but some kids might.
What I was saying was writing a note of praise instead of saying something nice, writing something, you know, a thank you note to your kid.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. See, I'm so used to people asking about the corrections. Yeah, writing a note, especially, you know, like, especially if it's something that they've been working on for a while, and then they finally kind of like turn a corner in terms of, you know, you're seeing behaviors you haven't really seen before, or you're seeing them with a consistency that you haven't seen them before. Definitely like a card, or even just a note, you know, can go a long way. And you want to leave it in a place that's like, you know, like you put it, if it's okay with them and you have this relationship, you put it in their room, put it on their pillow, you know, you put it somewhere where just they find it. You don't have to put it on the kitchen table where everybody can come and find it. You know, you just want to make it, you make it something that they can tell people about, or they don't have to tell people about. It's up to them.
Now that you have one last video that you put up there, Doc.
Hey, where do we keep the soap for the dishwasher? What? You know that if you actually lifted a finger to help out around here once in a while. Okay. It's under the sink. That's not too much trouble for you. Yeah, thanks.
All right. That's a parent that turned a victory into a defeat. Snatched defeat from the jaws of victory there, right? So the kid's doing what you want them to do, right? They're already like wanting to clean. They're already pitching it. They're already pitching in.
Yeah.
And you're going to start to criticize the way they go about it, right? Or you're going to find opportunities to teach them a lesson, right? And it becomes a negative experience, one that the team does not want to repeat, you know? And, but it happens a lot, and it happens in very subtle ways. That was a pretty obvious way. I mean, like, my videos are like, I try to make it as obvious as possible,
right?
You know? But people do still behave in that obvious way. But a lot of times it's more subtle than that. They're just like little things that we do that actually are just end up being critical, you know? My wife and I, you know, I have to let her know. I've had to let her know at times. Look, if you want me to do something, I am more than happy to do it. But if you come in and redo it after I've done it, because it wasn't done the way that you do it, I'm just gonna wait for you to do it. I'm not gonna like. It's like, so I feel it's insulting. You know, it's sort of like I just worked on that. You know, you're gonna go in and rearrange the whole dishwasher because you didn't like the way that
dishes. The dishes.
Yeah, it's always the dish. Always the dishes.
Always.
So, you know, when when your kid comes and says, where's the dish soap, or where's this, where's that? Oh, dude, thank you so much. So you're going to take care of that. That's a huge help, man. Yeah. And then you tell them wherever it is, or even you go with them to just show them, but you make it a positive experience for them. You make it a plus. The fact that they don't know, or that you've told them 100 times, does not matter.
Well, plus it's a chore that's been spelled out, so the kid knows what he has to do. It's written down. It's not because he's sitting on his ass not doing anything. He finished everything. So maybe write the stuff down.
Yeah, write it down. Yeah. Don't expect also that they're going to know how to do it right the first time. That that some of these things they're like haven't done very often, and so there's going to be a learning curve, and that's just part of it. And it doesn't, like, kids don't, they're not born knowing how to do knowing how to clean the bathroom, or how to do laundry. Those are things that they're gonna mess up, or they're gonna have ideas about that are like not realistic. And your job is to, just bring them along in a way that is actually encouraging, right? Like you would if you had an employee. You're not going to insult your employee, or
right.
You're going to have a lot of turnover if that's what happens, or the morale.
Yeah, they're going to quit.
Yeah.
They're going to quit, or up their game of consequences, that the kid will give consequences to the parent. Key the car, run away, right? They got to keep upping the game.
Well, what usually happens is the kid then starts to pick apart what the parent does. So what they do is they reciprocate with criticisms. They find ways to criticize what the parent does, either in the way that they carry out. Why'd you do it that way, Dad? That's not very smart. No, nobody does that, right? They find lots of ways to criticize, or then they go after the way that they parent. They find a way to even the score, and that's not something you want to model, and that's not a way that you want them to. You don't want them to internalize handling feedback, right? So that if they get criticism, or they get somebody that corrects them on something, you want them to be able to say, "Oh, thanks, I appreciate that. That actually was really helpful. It leads me in the right direction," right? So you can give them criticism. You can tell them that they need to do it differently next time, and give them the reasoning why. Like, when you clean the toilet, you got to clean, underneath the rim and this and that, and that's why. And it's understandable you didn't do it. It's not obvious. So next time we'll get it. All right, buddy. High five or fist bump. Let's go get some tacos or whatever we want to do.
Doc, we're getting towards the end of the show. This is going to be a clickbait question. Doc, what are your thoughts on spankings? When did they start? When did they stop? Does it work? Why doesn't it work? If it doesn't, what are your thoughts on that? I'll hang up and listen for my answer.
First time calling. Yeah. So spanking is also talked about as corporal punishment, and spanking is one of those things that it's gotten, people still spank. I think that people turn to hitting, or it could be spanking, it could be a slap, it could be the wooden spoon, it could be soap in the mouth, it could be any number of these strategies that they're inflicting some physical pain or discomfort as a consequence. And the short answer is the literature is really clear that it doesn't work very well. Like it works in the short term. It'll get people to stop doing what they're doing in the short term, but in the long term, it does not. Like they return to those behaviors. And a lot of times they return to them like tenfold, right? Like they get worse, and the relationship with the parents deteriorates because there's some real issues there when the person you're supposed to trust and confide in and turn to for your own welfare smacks you, right? That's like, for a child, they're just like, that doesn't make any sense to them. And it's like, it's very confusing to them, right? So there's cultural issues around this, like, spanking and corporal, like I put videos up on spanking and corporal punishment. People say, well, that's because you're white, you're a white guy, and white, you have no idea what it's like in, Black families or in Latino families, or that kind of, and it's an opportunity to sort of like make fun of me, but like, and it's true that actually there are cultural factors involved, that like corporal punishment and the like is something that tends to be handed down more in African American families and Latino families. However, there's a huge number of African American families that have taken a really clear stand on being against this, and academic scholars, African American scholars, that say, look, man, this is like holdover from slavery time crap that you're pulling here. You're like whipping your kid. Like, what the hell are you doing? What kind of generational trauma are you like perpetuating here, right? And so that's to me, when I hear that, I'm like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me,
Doc, if a kid gets spanked, are they more prone to inflict punishment on somebody else, getting fights, or somebody doesn't do what they liked and they smack them?
So I'm gonna speak generally.
Yeah, generally.
Generally, the answer is yes. Okay. Generally, the answer is that what you're doing is you're modeling an aggressive way of dealing with conflict. You have a disagreement or you're upset about something, so what you do is you haul off and you hit the person that you're upset with, right? And that's how you resolve the conflict. And it's about power. It's a power thing. Like, I have the power, you don't, and I'm going to show you that I have the power, because I'm going to hurt you and you're not going to be able to do a damn thing about it, right? And so the child internalizes that, and that's a model that like they get for how to deal with things. They also like, there's also other things that, other research that demonstrates that kids who are regularly spanked or corporal punishment is used, they're just more like dysregulated emotionally. Like, they're just more on edge. They're more like anxious. They tend to be more reactive on the whole. Now, there's some dispute about whether kids that are more dysregulated, ADHD, or have behavioral problems attract that kind of corporal punishment. So that it's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing, which one causes the other. But the truth of the matter is that we've been able to separate that out and show that actually people that do spanking and corporal punishment, it actually has its own independent contribution to disruptive, dysregulated behaviors. That's, different than what the kid walked in there with.
Got it. Well, Dr. Razzino, I like what we did here. I think we're going to do this going forward. Take a look at your videos from the past week and get into a few tangents, talk about why you did it. What could you have done differently? Leave it the same. I think this is pretty cool.
Yeah. Let's run with it. And we'll find a way to weave in people, and while we don't have an audience necessarily live streaming questions and stuff like that, we can do this content and follow it from there.
Well, for those that are watching and listening, we get to 50 subscribers. That means we can live stream. So hit that subscribe and like button now.
Booyah.
Thanks for watching and listening. Bite Size Therapy with Dr. Brian Razzino. See you next week.